Hi, I'm Cynthia Hill, and I'm the Director of Private Violence. When Kit Gruelle brought me on board over 7 years ago to work on this project, I had no idea how big of a problem we have. Every day in this country, 3 women die at the hands of an intimate partner. I find that unacceptable, and I think you do too. That's why you're here. We can make a difference. We can make it safer for women and children in their own homes. Thank you so much to the sponsors of this event, the Women's Commission, the Charlotte Film Society, and Safe Alliance. Thank you all.
Hello, I'm Tim Funk with the Charlotte Film Society, and we're here with Kip Gruelle. She is the special advisor to Private Violence, the film that we're going to be showing today. How are you today?
I'm good.
Great
How
to
about
have you here.
Thank
Great.
you.
Tell me what your hopes are for this film, Private Violence.
Well, I think the first word kind of sums it all up. What we hope to do with the film is take this issue that has remained private for way too long, and sort of get it out there in a way that is accessible to people. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about domestic violence. I think the term in itself is it doesn't paint a clear picture.
Right.
And so one of the things that I think the film does is it helps people to understand the level of violence that we're talking about, and then it's not just about the violence, but it's also about how the systems respond to domestic violence. I like to say that abusers abuse and the system drives a getaway car. Because as long as we continue to treat domestic violence as if it's sort of a red-headed stepchild of criminal conduct, then we're just kind of giving the abuser a green light to just carry on. And that obviously affects the direct victims, the primary victims, but it also affects the community. And what we've been able to see with the film is by having this conversation about what goes on behind closed doors, we can also talk about domestic violence in the larger context and how it affects the entire community.
Well, that leads me to one of my other questions. How does North Carolina compare to other states in terms of its laws, its policies, what it funds or not funds? Is it part of the problem or part of the solution? Would
You want the
say?
short answer?
Yeah.
It sucks.
How so? How so?
Well, for example, as you'll see in the film, we have a charge in North Carolina that's commonly used in domestic violence cases called misdemeanor assault with a deadly weapon. So that means an abuser can shoot or stab his wife or girlfriend, and unless it involves a serious injury involving a major organ or something like that, it's going to be charged as a misdemeanor, which gets back to why I say the system drives the getaway car. If you can stab your girlfriend or your wife, or shoot your girlfriend or your wife, and have our court system say this is a misdemeanor crime, what that kind of is like is an echo chamber, because she's obviously incredibly negatively impacted by that. But then what about her family and friends and everyone who knows how bad it's been for her, and then they see the courts turn around and treat this as if it's an insignificant crime. And so that's kind of the echo chamber that I talk about, and that's the kind of thing that gets other victims to not call 911 or not call the domestic violence program, because they say, well, this happened to her, she was shot or she was stabbed, and they charged him just, at the misdemeanor level. So why am I going to bother to call?
Sure.
And it's kind of the malignancy domestic violence is, because it's really the feeder crime for all the other criminal conduct that we deal with. When kids are born into families where violence is the norm, or coercion or intimidation or any of the other tactics that abusers use, then they don't walk out the door with a particularly strong set of values themselves. And so we see it continue on generation after generation after generation. And that's why programs like this incredible program that's here in Charlotte are so important, because it's a multifaceted program that deals with every single aspect of what it is that the women and the kids are having to sort through. And
So it's not so bad in Charlotte in terms of the
well,
system?
Charlotte has Safe Alliance. And because Safe Alliance has such a great and comprehensive take on domestic violence, and they understand the complexities of it, and they're prepared to deal with all those issues, I think women who are dealing with domestic violence here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg have a much better chance at kind of rearranging the molecules of their lives than women who don't have programs that are as strong as Safe Alliance.
Like the women in the movie, for example.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Talked about, this is film, I believe it's been on HBO, so
Mhm.
a lot of, a national audience of people watching it in their homes has seen it, but how is that different from being able, like today, to show it to a live audience and being able to interact with them and answer their questions? What's the benefits of that, would you
Well,
say?
I think the benefits are that when people can come together to talk about this issue that they oftentimes want to keep to themselves because they feel ashamed or they feel stigmatized, when they can come into a room like this and hear that it's much more common than people realize. And there is a group of people here in Charlotte that understand that it's not about what the victim has or hasn't done, then she's more willing to kind of step out of the shadows and say, I need some help. Whereas if someone is watching it at home, they might say, that's happening to me, but I don't know what to do next. Or they might call a program and the program is completely overwhelmed or whatever, and not have the kind of comprehensive services that Safe Alliance does. And then they just shrink back into the shadows again. So I happen to really like and appreciate the opportunity to be able to be in with a large audience of people, mixed audience, you know, men and women, people from different walks of life, because I think we all have things to learn from each other with regards to this issue and how we all have to stand sort of side by side to stop it.
Talk about the power of film. It's one thing to read statistics about social problems like domestic violence. It's another thing to see Deanna's story on the screen, to see those horrific pictures of what her abuser did. Talk about film, what film can bring to this conversation.
Well, I think it makes it accessible in a way that, and I'm a huge book reader. I mean, I read books all the time. But I think when you watch the story unfold like Deanna's story and you see the complexities and you see the courage that she has, I think people walk out of the theater with a different sense of just exactly what it is we're talking about. Because it gets contextualized in a way that I don't think it does. And film just does it. I mean, when I first started thinking about working on a project like this, it was a no-brainer to me to say this needs to be a documentary film. I mean, there are wonderful, wonderful books out there about domestic violence, but I don't think that books have the same capacity to illuminate the issue in the way that film does.
Okay. Two last questions. You say in the film that a lot of these cases are complicated, and then in some cases the woman goes back to the abuser. Do you think attitudes are changing, and that's becoming, I mean, we're here in the South. I think for a long time that was sort of accepted, that this is a home situation. Do you think those are changing societally, and in the South, those attitudes?
No.
No.
I think that a lot of it, I think that the mindset has changed for some. Like, for example, law enforcement now tend to do a much better job in responding to domestic violence cases where historically they said, oh, this is just, you know, a husband and his wife fighting and it's none of our business. And I think one of the ways in which we have evolved is people now understand that this is a crime and it should be treated like a crime. And that happens even in the South. But because domestic violence is such a multifaceted issue and because it's about power imbalances, oftentimes, you know, the men are the ones with a higher degree of power and the women have less power. One of the basics about this particular issue is I think that there are still people that want to maintain that power imbalance. And that's one of the areas where I think we have a long, long way to go. Not just because it negatively affects women. I mean, obviously, it's for women to get intimidated and coerced and abused. It's terrible. But I think what we need to start focusing on is what men who are abusive lose by working to maintain this false power that they have. We live in a society where people think that that power is the same thing as respect, and it's not. And so that has to be one of the areas that I think we start to sort of expand on, because you don't love your husband if he's abusing you. You're afraid of him, and they're not the same thing.
You have, I believe, domestic violence in your own background. What does that bring to the table in terms of your own passion for this subject? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I still have a very acute understanding of what it means to be afraid in your own home. And when you think about what we all believe this country is founded on, which is the notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and yet for 1 out of every 4 women, their own home is the most violent place in the world for them to be. There's just something fundamentally wrong with that. I mean, this is a country that talks all the time about freedom. And yet for women who are living with their own personal terrorist, freedom is not a part of their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And so based on my own experience with my late husband, and then him dying, which was extraordinary because I never thought that I'd be free. It just, every single day, and he's been dead for almost 35 years. Every single day, I don't stop at some point in time and think about the fact that I am free, that I'm here with you, that I've been able for 30 years now to do this work that means so much to me, to challenge not just the patriarchal systems that allow domestic violence to continue, but also to get men to understand what they're losing as they're trying to hang on to that control. It's just, it sounds like a cliche, but I believe, and I think all the advocates who do this work really believe, that the more we can create peace in homes, the safer and healthier our communities are going to be. I mean, I know a man who started the profiling unit at the FBI, and he has said that domestic violence programs are the best crime prevention programs in the country because they stabilize families. So it's just an abiding passion that I've had now for 30 plus years, and I don't ever get tired of seeing a woman who's been told that her life has little to no value start to understand how wonderful and strong and competent she really is.
I actually want to invite you, the last thing is to look in the camera and talk to people, talk to women who have their own personal terrorists and they're still dealing with that. What would you advise them?
I think the first thing that I would say to women who are living with partners that are controlling and abusive is you deserve to be safe at all times. You deserve to know that you've got a community that you can turn to, and that no one should live in fear all the time. No one should live in fear ever. So I would encourage anyone from any walk of life, because this is not an issue that's exclusive to a particular socioeconomic group, to just know that your home should be the place where you feel safest in the world. Safe to raise your children, safe to do the things that your heart and your head tell you to do, and that your partner should love and respect you at all times under all circumstances, in particular when you're disagreeing. And that for women here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, you've got an extraordinarily amazing program and Safe Alliance to turn to for the kind of help that you need in sorting through the complicated issues.
You have a website or a phone number for anything if somebody's
The
looking?
website for the film is www.privateviolence.com, and then I actually have my own website, which is a little weird, but it's just www.kitgruelle, KITGRUELLE.com. And I'm happy to come out and do, public speaking, advocacy training, whatever. I just truly, truly love this work.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful,
Thank
powerful
you so
film.
much.